You are,
You're muted.
you're muted.
Thank you. All right. I am Gaurab Bhardwaj, or GB, and I am a professor at a business school called Babson. We are out here in Massachusetts. I teach strategy to undergraduates, MBAs, and to executives. And this is important because it influences how I approach my research, because the aim ultimately is that we should be teaching our students to not do harm. So with that little bit of background, I'll talk a little bit about my research and then how I have been using the opioid documents. So my research program is really just trying to understand how executives in the opioid industry, how did they make decisions that ended up causing so much harm to patients, families, society. And I have, in my discipline, articles are, very important. And so I have an article right now under review where I discovered that OxyContin was called a wonder drug or a miracle drug and even an ideal drug. And I discovered, looking at the medical literature, that there was no evidence that it was any better than any drug that already existed in the market. So a brand new drug that claims to be a miracle drug, if you look at the clinical evidence, it isn't. It isn't better than anything that existed. So in many respects, there was no reason for OxyContin to be launched in the market. And so that's what the first paper is about. And I'm working on another paper on how the focus here is on marketing, and how marketing is so focused on getting the sale that they never looked at patients and their lives. And even while the epidemic is growing, there's no difference in the decision-making at these companies. So that's a second paper. In my discipline, you have to, papers must develop new theory. You can't just tell a story. You have to use the story to develop a new theory. And so that's the third paper that you see listed up here. And my intention is to write a book. The working title is Profit, Truth, and Lives, with a focus really on Purdue Pharma and McKinsey, and to look at their decision-making over almost 25 years. So that's a book project a little further down the line. I am also working on a paper where I'm using the drug industry documents rather than the opioid. And there is a collection on blood products. And this paper is important and connects with the opioid work because it's easy for people to dismiss, one company, to say, oh, well, they are an outlier. And what you want to show is that there is a pattern, a common pattern in decision-making. So this allows me to show some similar patterns that were taking place many years earlier in a different segment of sort of healthcare. So that's sort of my research program on dollars and lives. And my approach is, as I mentioned, to use these stories to build theory. And I would, another way to describe my research and approach is that I'm writing a microhistory of analysis. So my focus is really on how people analyze and think. The reason this is important is because this is what we teach in business schools. And there are very few examples of harm. Most of our teaching is very prescriptive, that this is the best way to make decisions, but we don't have very many good examples of how companies have made harmful decisions. So it's sort of a microhistory. And what I'm doing is I'm supplementing the opioid documents with the literature in medicine. Uh, and I'm getting documents on competition, in the industry, and using a lot of newspaper sources as well. So that's the broad approach. And I'm going to go in a little bit deeper here in explaining how I have approached the opioid archive. So I actually started work on this project before the opioid documents were made available, before OIDA was formed. And so previously, I was gathering information from contemporary news stories, and legal documents. And this ended up being very helpful because I learned quite a bit, and I was able to use that to search the opioid archive. So here's how I approached it. So you can see the non-OIDA sources that I used were congressional hearings, medical and public health literature, CDC, Department of Justice, the state AG offices, particularly the one in Massachusetts, where I live, news organizations, ProPublica, Stat News, Washington Post, New York Times. These led me to a whole bunch of legal documents. And of course, there have been several books that have come out. So this knowledge that I gathered from these other sources helped me in my OIDA search by focusing on people, events, decisions. And the last bullet point I will explain is I use the footnotes and exhibits of legal documents to chase corporate documents within OIDA. So far, I have focused on Purdue Pharma and McKinsey. I will expand to other organizations a little bit later. I believe I have read just about everything there is to read from the early 90s to 2005. Initially, the document collection was small enough that I actually read everything. But some of the recent collections are just too big. And just for amusement, I did the math. To go through 3.09 million documents, it'll take me 28 years if I just browse spend 90 seconds on each document. So clearly, you need a strategy. I need a strategy. So here are the approaches I've taken that I found useful. This is a screenshot of the main page that you go to. I used to check this every day, and I would go to you can see this fluorescent arrow on the bottom right. That's where the website will post a link to a new article every day. And I used to go there every day. And it led me to some really incredibly, it's luck plays a role here, but it led me to some really useful stuff. So if you click on the link, so it says New York Times, how doctors help drive the addiction crisis. So you click on that, it takes you to this page. And here, this is invaluable, right? Because I'm interested in how people make decisions. So you can see now that this New York Times article is being discussed within McKinsey. And now you have the names of all the players involved, right, on the document itself, but also on the right side of your screen, you can see who the recipients are, and you can see who the author is. And so I can sort of make a note of these individuals, and I can then search using their name. On the upper right corner, where the arrow shows you, there are those three links, previous, next, Bates, browse, and more like this. I found that to be extremely helpful. So once I identify an article that is really important, I then, so as you can see here, when I click on browse, it gives me, and you can see in the top row, the beige colored one, that's the original document. And there's a whole series of documents on the right and then on the left of that row. So what I've done is I've gone right up to 10, 15, 20 documents, and then I've gone left 10, 15, 20 documents. and you come across amazingly useful things. And, so here's something similar. You do find different sets of documents using each of these tabs or links. And you can see over here, it's a different set of documents now in the top row. And now let's look at the third link where it says more like this. I was surprised. Here's a document on Mike Pence slow walking needle something, right? That's completely unexpected. So that, I'm going to download that, put that document in the middle of my screen, and then use that to search for other documents. There's an interesting one on the FDA over here. So this approach has been very helpful for me. This is the document that got me started in January 2019. The Wall Street Journal carried an article on Purdue Pharma the day Maura Healey, who's now the governor of Massachusetts, but when she was the AG, when she sued Purdue Pharma. And they had a link to this complaint. I downloaded this, and this is what got me started. I was stunned by what I read. And I started gathering documents from multiple places. But now, within this document, there are exhibits. So there's an attachment A, and you can see the documents that they have listed with some kind of a reference. Now, on the OIDA website, of course, they may have different labels, but at least the names are the same. So I've used this to then go and search. Here are a couple of other examples. So, you look at on the left side, 206, it says they were making more money than expected. They had a projected profit of 407 million, but they're now they expect to make more than 600 million. And then you have these citations to board reports, and you can see the number of citations on the right side of your screen over here. I then go and look for them. And they're not always there, but sometimes I do find other documents that are related. The McKinsey collection has grown staggeringly, and I know it's going to grow even more. So this has been very helpful. I used to actually keep a spreadsheet of my searches because at some point, my fear was I would be repeating searches that I had already done. So I have a spreadsheet for the last couple of years with all the searches I've done, not all, but most. And these are the field names that are mentioned in the help section of the website. The ones that I have used are the author, organization, title, recipient, and mentioned. I found that to be a very useful one. And it reminds me of, what Keith Value was talking about, how a single word can get you going. That's kind of what I found over here. So using this search mechanism was very helpful to me. What else helped? The bibliography section of the website helped, because I would go and read all the articles that are in the bibliography, because I figured someone has done the research and found something useful. It's worth my knowing what it is. So I have benefited a lot from the bibliography as well, and by going into these links. And so just in closing, this is the archive is extraordinary. In my discipline, which is strategy and management, it's just, it's really truly stunning to read these documents. Why? Because companies don't like to reveal how they make decisions, particularly decisions that cause harm. So, all the documents on the website are invaluable. So it has allowed me to study questions and develop ideas that I would not have been able to do otherwise. And it has informed my teaching. And I have taken certain examples of decision-making at Purdue and McKinsey into my classroom with undergraduates and MBAs. And rather than tell them what happened, I give them information piece by piece and have them make the decision. And then we talk about what actually happened. And it's very startling for them to see the divergence between how they're thinking and how some of the decisions these companies made. So that's my talk. This is my contact information. I think one way for all of us to benefit is to learn from each other. How we search and what we are running into, what we are encountering. So I hope through this webinar and workshop, we can build a community of people working on these documents.
Thanks so much. And that's a wonderful segue as we start to move into the workshop phase about, this collaborative effort, working together or building that research community that one of the main goals of this event is to build out the number of folks who want to engage with this collection or these collections, generate questions, answer questions, or start to answer questions about some of these phenomena that could be found in the OIDA and the industry library writ large. So since our workshop is going to be starting at 1 o'clock, which is in 6 minutes, I want everyone who is participating in the workshop to take a quick break. I will open up the workshop Zoom room for those who are attending the workshop. So you could start populating in there and we'll start at 1 o'clock. But before that, I want to thank everybody for not only attending, but especially all of the participants and panelists who provided insight into how we can start to engage with this collection. And as the OIDA builds in volume, it's already quite large, but it's going to get larger. We can see with the work of people like Dr. Welu and others who have used previous IDL collections, as models for building on how we can engage with what is ostensibly a different set of topics and themes, but obviously are definitely connected to one another in terms of how we actually research and answer and ask questions of the opioid industry collection as well. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Round of applause. Yay, everybody. This is wonderful. And I look forward to everyone who's going to be in the workshop. And thank you all again for attending, and have a great day.